Hello, my beautiful Taurus. I'm really glad you're here today. I hope you've found a quiet little moment just for yourself, somewhere you can let your shoulders relax and simply breathe. If this message finds you at the end of a long day, or maybe at the beginning of a brand new chapter, just know that you're welcome here. As always, take what resonates, leave behind what doesn't, and trust your own intuition above everything else. Okay, let's shuffle the cards together and see what wants to come forward for you. The energy feels different already, softer, yet somehow stronger. There's a quiet confidence surrounding you that wasn't here before, and I keep getting the feeling that something you've been waiting for is finally beginning to move. The very first card that reveals itself is the Wheel of Fortune. I actually paused for a second when this card appeared because it feels like the atmosphere around you is changing in a way that's difficult to ignore. It doesn't seem loud or dramatic. Instead, it feels like the kind of sunrise you barely notice until suddenly the whole sky is glowing. For so long, it may have felt as though life kept asking you to wait. Wait for clarity. Wait for peace. Wait for the right opportunity. Wait for people to understand your heart. Yet this card doesn't carry the energy of endless waiting anymore. It feels like movement, gentle at first, but undeniable. As I continue to shuffle, the Ace of Pentacles quietly slips into the reading, almost as if it has been waiting for the perfect moment to introduce itself. There's a sense that something tangible is beginning to take shape. Maybe it comes as an unexpected conversation. Maybe it's a new opportunity that feels surprisingly natural. Maybe it's simply the realization that you've become someone much stronger than the version of yourself who started this journey months ago. Whatever form it takes, it feels grounded, real, like something you can finally reach out and hold instead of only imagining. You know, Taurus, sometimes the greatest blessing isn't receiving something new. Sometimes it's finally recognizing your own worth after spending far too much time questioning it. I keep feeling that this reading isn't only about external change, it's also about the way you look at yourself. There was a version of you who accepted less than you deserved because your heart was hoping people would eventually see your value. But something inside you has shifted, quietly, naturally, without needing anyone's permission. Then the Six of Wands appears, and oh my God, this card carries such a peaceful kind of victory. Not the victory that needs applause or attention. It's the feeling of walking away from a difficult season and realizing you survived every moment that once convinced you that you wouldn't. There may have been nights when you questioned everything, moments when silence felt heavier than words, times when you wondered whether your kindness was simply being overlooked. Yet here you are, still standing, still loving, still choosing hope, even after disappointment tried to convince you otherwise. It almost feels like the universe, or however you personally understand these moments, is quietly placing a hand on your shoulder and whispering, "Keep going." Not because everything is suddenly perfect, but because you've become someone capable of carrying your own light. That's a very different kind of strength. It's not loud. It's not proud. It's steady. The final card resting on the table is the Star, and its presence changes the emotional tone of this reading completely. There's a softness here that feels deeply healing. It seems like your heart has been collecting little pieces of itself after giving so much away. Little by little, you've been learning that peace doesn't always arrive because someone else returns or because every question finally gets answered. Sometimes peace arrives because you stop chasing what keeps running from you. You stop forcing doors that refuse to open. You stop measuring your value through someone else's ability to recognize it. Yeah, that's the feeling I can't shake. This month doesn't seem to begin with chaos. It begins with quiet alignment. Like invisible pieces falling into place while you're simply living your life one day at a time. You may not see every answer immediately, but the energy suggests you're no longer standing at a closed door. It feels like you're already walking through an opening that has been waiting for you longer than you realize. And as these first cards settle, I can't help but feel that they are only introducing a much deeper story that's about to unfold. The atmosphere begins to shift in a quieter way, Taurus. It's almost impossible to ignore it, because the cards seem less interested in what is happening around you and much more focused on what you're finally able to see. The moon arrives with an energy that feels strangely familiar, like walking into a room you've visited 100 times before, but suddenly noticing details that were always there. There are conversations that sound different, smiles that don't quite reach someone's eyes, silences that reveal more than words ever could. I keep getting the feeling that your intuition has been trying to tell you something for quite a while, but your heart kept giving people the benefit of the doubt. That's one of the beautiful things about you, Taurus. You don't rush to judge people. You want to believe that everyone carries goodness somewhere inside them. You give second chances, sometimes third chances, because your heart naturally leans toward patience instead of suspicion. But it feels like something has changed inside you, not because you've become colder, but because you've become more honest with yourself. The moon lingers on the table, as though it has another story to tell. It doesn't feel frightening. It feels revealing. There are moments coming where someone may accidentally show you exactly who they are, without even realizing they're doing it. Maybe it's a careless comment. Maybe it's the absence of support when you truly needed it. Maybe it's how quickly someone's energy changes once they realize you're no longer available to carry their burdens. Whatever it is, it seems less like a shocking betrayal and more like finally putting together pieces of a puzzle that never quite fit. Almost immediately, the Seven of Swords slips into the reading, and this card has such a quiet way of exposing hidden dynamics. It feels like there have been people who appreciated what you could provide far more than they appreciated who you actually are. Some may have enjoyed your loyalty, your generosity, your willingness to listen, yet they rarely pause to ask how you were feeling. There's a sense that certain connections have been built around convenience instead of mutual care. The interesting part is that you don't seem interested in chasing explanations anymore. That's what feels different. A few months ago, you might have spent endless nights wondering what you did wrong, or trying to repair relationships that only one person was truly maintaining. This energy feels much calmer. You notice, you understand, and instead of arguing with reality, you simply allow it to reveal itself. The Queen of Swords enters so gracefully that she almost feels like your own inner voice, stepping forward for the first time in a long while. Oh my God. I really love this energy for you, because it doesn't ask you to become someone else. It simply reminds you that kindness and boundaries can exist in the very same heart. You don't have to stop being compassionate in order to protect your peace. Those two things were never enemies. It feels like you're becoming more comfortable saying no, without carrying guilt afterward. Maybe someone asks for another favor that leaves you emotionally exhausted. Maybe someone expects immediate access to your time, your energy, or your attention, simply because that's what they've always received from you. The Queen of Swords quietly whispers that your peace deserves a place at the table too. That's not selfish. That's balance. Yeah. Balance seems to be the word echoing through this entire moment, because justice appears almost effortlessly beside her. I don't get the feeling that this card is promising dramatic confrontations, or people suddenly admitting every mistake they've ever made. Life doesn't always unfold that way. Instead, it feels like truth, naturally finding its proper place. Some relationships become stronger because they're built on honesty. Others begin fading because they can no longer survive once illusions disappear. Justice also carries another gentle message. Be careful not to ignore your own instincts, simply because you hope someone will eventually become different. There's wisdom in listening to the quiet voice inside you before it has to become a loud lesson. Your intuition doesn't seem interested in creating fear. It only wants to keep your heart aligned with people who genuinely celebrate your presence, instead of merely benefiting from it. As these cards settle into stillness, another layer of this journey begins to quietly unfold, carrying an energy that feels far more personal than anything we've touched on so far. Judgment rises into the reading with a quiet kind of certainty, Taurus, and the feeling surrounding it is surprisingly gentle. It doesn't seem like you're being asked to become someone completely different. It feels more like you're finally returning to someone you almost forgot was still inside you. There have been so many seasons where survival became the priority. You kept moving because you had to. You kept showing up because people depended on you. Somewhere along the way, your own dreams may have been placed on a shelf with the promise that you'd come back to them later. It feels like later is beginning to arrive. I keep getting the feeling that you've been carrying invisible weight for much longer than anyone realizes. The kind of weight that doesn't leave bruises people can see. Disappointment, self-doubt, conversations you replayed over and over, wondering if you could have said something differently. Opportunities you questioned yourself out of before anyone else even had the chance to respond. Judgment doesn't seem interested in reminding you of those moments. Instead, it quietly invites you to leave them where they belong. There's something incredibly freeing about recognizing that your past doesn't have to introduce you anymore. Strength appears almost immediately afterward, and oh my God, this card feels so warm. Not loud, not dramatic, just steady, like the kind of person who walks into a room without needing to prove anything because they've already survived enough to know who they are. It feels like you're discovering a new relationship with yourself, one built on patience instead of criticism. Maybe you still have moments when uncertainty whispers in your ear. That's completely human, but those whispers don't seem to have the same power they once did. You're learning that confidence isn't the absence of fear. Sometimes confidence is simply choosing to move anyway. There's also a beautiful emotional softness here. Taurus, you're someone who gives deeply when your heart feels safe. You don't offer pieces of yourself carelessly. Because of that, every disappointment has mattered. Every goodbye has left its own fingerprint. Yet strength suggests those experiences haven't made your heart smaller. They've made it wiser, more intentional, more protective of the peace you've worked so hard to rebuild. As the cards continue to unfold, the Ace of Pentacles returns, and its presence feels even more grounded than before. This time, the energy seems connected to the practical side of life. I keep sensing doors beginning to crack open in places that once felt completely still. Maybe a conversation about work carries unexpected potential. Maybe an idea you've been quietly holding on to starts feeling possible instead of distant. Maybe you simply notice yourself saying yes to opportunities you would have talked yourself out of months ago. Whatever form this takes, it doesn't feel rushed. It feels earned. You know, sometimes abundance begins long before money ever arrives. It begins the moment you believe you're worthy of receiving something better. That shift changes everything. The way you introduce yourself, the way you negotiate, the way you walk into interviews, the way you speak about your talents. People often respond differently because your energy has quietly changed first. Yeah, I really like that feeling. The sun comes forward almost effortlessly, and the atmosphere becomes lighter. It's almost like opening the curtains after several cloudy mornings and realizing the light had been waiting outside the whole time. There seems to be more laughter returning to your life, more moments where you catch yourself smiling for reasons that aren't connected to anyone else's approval. Those little moments matter more than we sometimes realize. The sun also carries a feeling of expansion. Your world may begin to feel a little bigger, new connections, fresh ideas, different routines, a renewed curiosity about what life still has to offer. Instead of asking, "What if this goes wrong?" you may find yourself wondering, "What if this actually works?" That's such a powerful question. It feels like you're becoming magnetic without trying to be. Not because you're seeking attention, but because genuine peace has a way of attracting people opportunities, and experiences that resonate with it. Others may notice something different about you before you even find the words to describe it yourself. They'll simply feel that you've become lighter, more present, more comfortable in your own skin. The cards grow quieter for a moment, yet there's still one layer of this journey waiting to reveal itself, and it seems ready to test everything you've been rebuilding from the inside out. Five of Wands enters the reading with an energy that feels different from the cards we've been sitting with, Taurus. It's not here to take away everything you've been rebuilding. If anything, it feels like a final test of everything you've recently learned about yourself. I keep getting the feeling that a situation may arise where emotions run higher than expected. It could be a misunderstanding, a disagreement, or simply someone projecting their own frustration onto you. The interesting part is that this doesn't feel random. It almost feels like life quietly asking, will you respond the way you always have, or the way you've grown into? You know, there are moments when people become uncomfortable with your peace because they were accustomed to your availability, your silence, or your willingness to carry burdens that never truly belong to you. When you begin changing those patterns, not everyone immediately understands. Some may interpret your boundaries as distance. Others may mistake your calmness for indifference. Yet it seems this moment isn't really about changing their perspective. It's about trusting your own. There may be a conversation where you're tempted to explain yourself over and over again, hoping someone will finally understand your intentions. I don't know if that's where your energy truly belongs anymore. The cards seem to suggest that not every misunderstanding requires endless clarification. Some people only hear what they're ready to hear, no matter how carefully you choose your words. As I look closer, justice appears once again, and there's something incredibly reassuring about seeing this card return. It feels like quiet balance moving beneath the surface, even if everything above it seems temporarily unsettled. I don't get the sense that everything suddenly becomes easy overnight. Instead, it feels like truth, finding its own way without needing to be forced. Maybe someone eventually realizes they judged you too quickly. Maybe circumstances reveal details that weren't visible before. Maybe people who remained silent begin speaking up when it truly matters. However this unfolds, justice carries the feeling that authenticity has a quiet strength of its own. It doesn't have to shout, "Oh my God, one thing keeps standing out to me." The people who genuinely care about you don't seem interested in defending you with empty promises. They show their loyalty through consistent actions. They check in. They stay. They make space for your voice instead of speaking over it. That's such an important difference, Taurus. Sometimes we spend so much energy wondering why certain people disappointed us that we overlook the ones who have been quietly supporting us all along. It feels like this experience gently rearranges your circle, not necessarily through dramatic endings, but through simple clarity. You begin recognizing where your energy naturally feels safe and where it constantly feels like hard work. That's valuable knowledge. It becomes easier to stop chasing connections that require you to shrink parts of yourself just to keep the peace. The atmosphere changes rather quickly as the Eight of Wands reveals itself. It's almost like a window suddenly opening after a room has felt heavy for too long. I keep sensing movement, messages arriving unexpectedly, conversations progressing faster than anticipated. A decision that seemed delayed finally begins moving forward. It may even feel surprising how quickly certain obstacles dissolve once the right information reaches you. This card also carries the feeling that opportunities don't always announce themselves with grand entrances. Sometimes they appear as a simple phone call, an email you almost ignored, a recommendation from someone who quietly remembered your name, a chance encounter that opens a completely different path than the one you had originally planned. There's something beautifully unpredictable about this energy. The Chariot becomes the final card resting before us, and its presence feels deeply empowering. Not because it promises a perfect road ahead, but because it reminds me that you've become someone capable of steering your own direction even when conditions aren't ideal. There was a time when outside circumstances may have determined how you saw yourself, whether people approved of you, whether situations worked out exactly as planned, whether someone stayed or walked away. That doesn't seem to hold the same power anymore. Yeah, there's a quiet determination surrounding you that wasn't visible before. You may still encounter uncertainty from time to time, but uncertainty no longer feels like something that stops you. It simply becomes another part of the journey. The Chariot suggests that you're learning to keep moving with your heart open and your feet firmly planted, trusting that each decision made from self-respect brings you closer to the life you're trying to create. As these cards gently settle into silence, one final message begins to emerge, carrying the feeling of completion, stability, and the kind of peace that can only be understood after everything you've walked through. The world quietly settles onto the table, Taurus, and something about its presence makes the entire room feel lighter. It's almost as if a long conversation has finally reached the point where silence feels comfortable instead of uncertain. I keep getting the feeling that you're stepping across an invisible threshold, not because every question has been answered or every challenge has disappeared, but because you're no longer carrying the same version of yourself who first walked into this journey. There are seasons in life when growth feels exhausting. You don't always notice it while it's happening, because you're too busy making difficult choices, healing from disappointments, or simply trying to get through another ordinary day. Then one morning, you wake up and realize that the things which once broke your heart no longer have the same power over you. The memories are still there, but they've become teachers instead of prisons. That's exactly what the world feels like. It seems as though life is gently rewarding every quiet decision you've made to keep moving forward, even when nobody applauded you for it. Every boundary you respected, every difficult goodbye you accepted, every moment you chose peace over proving yourself. Those choices may have looked small at the time, yet together they've created an entirely different foundation beneath your feet. The King of Pentacles appears with such calm confidence that I actually smiled when I saw him. Oh my God, this energy feels incredibly grounded. It doesn't rush, it doesn't panic, it doesn't compare itself to anyone else. Instead, it quietly reminds you that real stability is built one thoughtful decision at a time. For some of you, this may reflect a period where work begins feeling more secure, or perhaps your relationship with money becomes healthier than it has been in quite a while. I don't necessarily feel sudden riches falling from the sky. What I do sense is something much more sustainable, smarter choices, better timing, greater confidence in your own abilities, a growing willingness to invest your time and energy into things that genuinely support the life you're trying to build. There's also a beautiful emotional message here. The King of Pentacles seems to ask, what kind of life actually feels like home to you? Not the version that impresses everyone else, not the version social media celebrates. Your version, the one that allows you to wake up with a peaceful heart, knowing you're living according to your own values instead of someone else's expectations. As the reading continues, the Ten of Pentacles brings an incredibly comforting atmosphere. Yeah, this card carries the feeling of belonging. It reminds me that some of the most meaningful blessings aren't measured by achievements alone. They're found in the people who make ordinary moments feel extraordinary. The conversations that leave you feeling understood. The friendships that remain steady through changing seasons. The family you were born into, or perhaps the family you've chosen along the way. It feels like you're becoming much more selective about where you invest your love, your attention, and your emotional energy. Not because your heart has become smaller, but because you've learned its value. The relationships that continue growing from here seem rooted in honesty, mutual respect, and genuine care rather than obligation or convenience. There may even be moments when you look around and realize your circle feels different than it once did, perhaps a little smaller. yet somehow much richer, more peaceful, more authentic. There's something incredibly beautiful about reaching a place where quality matters more than quantity. Finally, the Hierophant appears, bringing a quiet sense of wisdom that gently wraps around everything we've explored together. It feels like this card is less concerned with telling you where you're going and more interested in reminding you who you're becoming, someone whose choices are guided by deeper values, someone who trusts their own inner compass a little more each day, someone who no longer needs every answer before taking the next meaningful step. I keep getting the feeling that this chapter isn't about becoming perfect, it's about becoming whole, allowing every lesson, every joy, every disappointment, and every unexpected blessing to shape you into someone who stands firmly in their own truth without needing constant reassurance from the outside world. Taurus, if these messages found their way into your heart today, perhaps that's the real gift of this reading, not certainty about tomorrow, but a quiet reminder that you've already grown into someone capable of meeting whatever tomorrow brings with grace, wisdom, and hope. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. If this reading resonated with your journey, I'd love to hear what stood out to you the most. Take gentle care of yourself, Taurus. You matter more than you know, and I truly look forward to sharing another reading with you very soon. Until then, goodbye, and may your path continue unfolding one beautiful step at a time.